All right, we are live. For those of you on Facebook, it's just good you're not here. That's all I'm saying. It's been a morning with this crew already, so glad to have you all joining us. It's been a good week. I hope you all have had a good week, and got Cindy eating her banana. So she good to go. No, I'm good. But it's been a good week. I've heard everything relevant that you need to know. You can find on Facebook. It's always true, right? And
it's on the internet.
It's on the internet, so it's got to be true. Abraham Lincoln said everything we read on the internet's true. So I read that on the internet. So it's anyway, 2 shopping Fridays left before Christmas.
I'm done.
Where has this year gone is really, and it's just crazy. So just as a reminder, you've got on your worship guides, on the back of those, this Christmas schedule. Just as a reminder, no Oasis, no Wednesday night service this Wednesday night. So the choir and the production for this coming weekend can have a last night of dress rehearsal. So that will be Wednesday night, so there'll be no Oasis. Also keep in mind, next week is the final life group meeting of the decade. It really sounds,
Wow.
when you put it that way.
Wow.
But the next 2 Sundays, so we'll meet next week. The next 2 Sundays, there are no life groups, but that's written on the back of your worship guide, so you can keep up with that to know when we meet, when we don't. There's 2 more Oasis meetings on Wednesday nights that won't meet because of Christmas and New Year, so those are back there as well. So just keep that in mind, okay? We have been studying through the Gospel of John. We are in John chapter 4. We studied last week Jesus and his conversation with the woman at the well. Today I want to start off telling you that, I don't mean to be a stereotype or stereotyping things, but I was raised by a truck driver. So I'm a truck driver's son. And truck drivers, the typical style of music listened to by the older generation of truck drivers. Anybody happen to know what that would have been? Country and that's right, country and western. So our dad listened to, and it had to be old school country.
Radio. Who's the guy that sang the CD radio song?
C.W. McCall. I could. If you want to, we can do that. Because from start to finish, if you'd like. So I wooed my wife on trucker songs. So it's all good. But the natural transition from secular country and western music for Christian music would have been Southern gospel. So that's what I was raised on, was Southern gospel music. The Kingsmen Quartet sang a song called Excuses. Anybody ever heard it? That's right. The chorus goes, excuses, excuses, you hear them every day. The devil, he'll supply them if from church we stay away. When people come to know the Lord, the devil always loses. So to keep those folks away from church, he offers them excuses. And, one of my favorite parts of the song is when the bass takes over and says the whole family had to stay home just to blow that poor kid's nose. But the song is more about why we don't consistently attend church. But it can also apply to why we don't consistently share our faith. What excuses have you heard why followers of Jesus will not share their faith? And let's put a precursor on that. I know any excuse that you throw out there isn't your own. This is things you've heard from people. So you don't have to think we're going to think that's your excuse, that you're making excuses. But what excuses have you heard for why people won't share and speak a word for Jesus?
I don't want to say the wrong thing and lead them to the wrong thing.
I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I'm afraid they'll ask me a question I don't know the answer to.
I'm afraid they'll ask a question I don't know the answer to.
It's not politically correct.
It's not politically correct, okay?
They know me too well.
Oh, they know, ooh.
They know me.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Okay, they know your flaws. You don't want the word hypocrite thrown your way. Okay, anything else? I'm too. Yeah, we know that's not your excuse. I'm too shy. Okay. Well, in John chapter 4, Jesus has been speaking a word to the woman from Samaria at the well of Jacob. So can you remind me this morning as we get started, why was it a big deal that Jesus is speaking to this individual?
Because Jesus speak to women.
Okay, men don't speak to women. What else?
She's not Jewish.
She's not Jewish. She's half, she's a Samaritan, so there's the conflict there. He's a rabbi. Rabbis don't speak to women in particular. So you've got all these different things going on, and he finishes his conversation with her in verse 26 when she has said that I know that the Messiah is coming, he who is called the Christ, and when he comes, he will tell us all things. And Jesus tells her straightforward, I am he. Right? So she has said, I believe a Messiah is coming. And basically he confirms that for her and says he's the one. So if you pick up in verse 27, we're going to look at 3 excuses for not sharing our faith. It says, just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, what do you seek? Or why are you talking with her? So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? They went out of the town and were coming to him. First off, the disciples marveled that he was talking with a woman. That word marveled there, it could be wondered, they were astonished. It set them back. They were blown away. They're mind blown that he's talking to this woman. Of course, I can give them a little bit of props for the fact that they kept it to themselves, basically. They didn't say, what do you need from her that we don't have for you? Where had they been?
Gathered food.
Okay, they'd gone to Walmart. Yeah, they were in town. They'd gone and got some food for them and was coming back. And they got some supplies, because they would have had more than just food supplies. They would have had other things with them as well, or more than just one meal, because they wouldn't have expected to be hanging out in Samaria very long. So they've gone into the town where she's from. They've gotten supplies, they've gotten food, they've come back, and now they see him speaking to her. Basically, the disciples give us the first excuse for not sharing our faith when we say, I don't think they would be interested. They had preconceived notions about this woman from Samaria. The disciples believed as they marveled, they believed as they were astonished that surely this woman of Samaria wouldn't be interested in what Jesus had to say. You know, there's this old school conflict going on between the Samaritans and the Jews. It probably started on the Jewish side of things. They would have looked down upon the Samaritans to begin with. And then after a while, when one group looks at you negatively for so long, you kind of earn or gain a little bit of despise for them as well, right? You just don't like them. So there's this ongoing thing. So they have this idea that this person from Samaria, this woman, just wouldn't even be interested in what they had to say, right? Because of the conflict. So I wondered, as I read that, where do we do that? I know there's times when we use the same kind of excuses for ourselves. Surely this person of no religious background, surely this person of different national heritage, or this person who likes Auburn or Alabama, you throw it in there yourself, this person of a different faith, surely this relative or friend of mine who knows me so well and lives their life so differently than I live mine, surely they don't have any interest in what I would have to say about Jesus. The disciples didn't marvel at the discussion Jesus had in chapter 3 with Nicodemus. Why do you think there was a difference? Why wouldn't they marvel at his discussion with Nicodemus? He was a man, okay? He was educated. He was a religious leader, right? So after he was a religious leader, he was a Jew. It would make sense to them that Nicodemus would be interested. This woman is a different story. My question for you today, as you think through these things that we're going to discuss, is who do we write off as a waste of time?
Those closest to us usually.
those closest to us usually. Okay, that was really meant to be rhetorical, but I'm glad you threw that out there. Those are the people. Those are some people that we will write off. How about those that we've grown up knowing they're just bad people. They're just, there's no hope for them. I remember there was a particular lawyer in Harlan County, Kentucky, that we had written off. We as a town, we as a church people had pretty well written off. And the transition and the transformation in his life when Jesus got a hold of him was blatantly obvious to those around us. God hadn't given up on him. And thankfully there were a couple men in the town who had not given up on him. But we give up on people. We'll write them off. And we write them off for various reasons. You could list for the next hour reasons why you would write off someone. But you got to keep in context here the idea of who Jesus is talking to, why it was such a big deal, why the disciples would have written off the people of the town, the conflict that has been ongoing that would leave a bad taste in their mouth, that they just wouldn't have thought they had anything for them. But there's another excuse we give. If you start off in verse 31, it says, "Meanwhile, the disciples were urging him, saying, 'Rabbi, eat.' But he said to them, 'I have food to eat that you do not know about.' So the disciples said to one another, 'Has anyone brought him something to eat?' Jesus said to them, 'My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work.'" Basically, the disciples' idea was, I'm too busy. Have you ever gotten so busy and preoccupied with what you were working on and trying to accomplish that time got away from you and you forgot to eat?
No.
Okay.
I mean, can you look at that?
I mean, come on. I was going to say, you look at me.
Postponed eating, but not forgotten.
Okay, you can tell when you look at me, I haven't missed very many meals, right? So, what my favorite time of day, every day, is noon. 12 o'clock. Lunchtime. I don't eat breakfast, but at 11 o'clock, I'm going, lunchtime's coming. Lunchtime's coming. And there have been times, for various reasons, there's all kinds of reasons that I've gotten busy, and next thing I know, it's past 12. And I look at the clock and I'm like, how did I miss 12 o'clock showing up? I got so busy, I forgot it was even 12 time to go eat. So, you know what? Y'all don't do that?
No, I do that at work, and then I go, no wonder I'm starving.
Yeah.
I do it at
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, it's 12:05. I'm just kidding. But there's been times it's 1 o'clock, it's 1:30, and I'm going, I need to go eat because we got busy. There was something else in our life at that moment that was more important than food. Whatever that is. Jesus is trying to explain that to the disciples because they've been busy and they've missed it. They may be task oriented like I am. There are times when I can be so task oriented that I don't even see the people around me. And as a minister here in this church in particular, I'm supposed to be in the business of people, not in jobs, right? And I remember there were times that people in a previous church got really angry because I'd been known to walk through the sanctuary going from my office to the balcony to go up and get the computer and the projector ready for the service that morning. And I didn't stop and talk with people who were already sitting in the sanctuary. And the reason is I was task oriented. I had a job to get done. I wouldn't have come right out and said, I don't have time for you. But the reality is, I didn't have time for them. Right? Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So we get busy. Jesus is kind of turning the tables on them. He is showing them, you're too busy, you're task oriented, you're worried about this food, but I'm so busy with the importance of sharing the gospel with this woman, I don't worry about food. The food is the least of my concerns. He's so absorbed with the matter at hand, he doesn't want to stop and eat. He doesn't get distracted by anything else. Jesus is demonstrating to his disciples the urgency of the gospel, that it should take priority over everything. We allow too many insignificant things to distract us from sharing the gospel.
Bless you.
Again, I know your answers will be about someone else and what you have seen or heard. But what are some things we let distract us? What do we let distract us from sharing our faith? Time?
Like, but I need to leave in 30 minutes, and what if it takes longer than that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really want to sit here for an hour. You know, I mean, you're selfish with your time.
Okay.
Or guarded with your time.
No, I think selfish was probably a better word there. We don't want to use it. We would rather use guarded, right? Because it sounds more polite or just better on our end, but really the word does come down. It really is selfish. Anybody else?
Social activities.
Social activities. Okay. What do you mean by that?
This party is more fun.
Okay. More interested in going and doing
Well,
and hanging out and being with friends than to share the faith. Okay.
my son's got to play ball, and I can't help it that gets in the way of church.
Okay. So we let hobbies and extracurricular activities, that kind of goes along with social, like she was talking about. Okay.
And social is a lot of times I just go home and I'm like, I don't want to fool with it, with the interaction with people, so I just go home and,
So comfort level.
yeah.
Yeah.
Comfort level for various reasons. It could be you're not as much the crowds, the people. You as an introvert maybe are more. I need to power down.
Right.
But there can be other reasons that go along with our comfort level. How about that we let the idea of not wanting to be. It goes along with the first question we asked, but we don't want to. We're fearful of being rejected. We're fearful we don't know enough. We're fearful someone's going to ask us a question we don't know the answer to. We're letting our lack. Can I boil that down a little bit? And I don't mean for this to jump up and down on anybody, but we let our lack of spiritual disciplines impact how much we're willing to share our faith. And instead of being willing to do what is necessary to be able to answer people's questions or to feel confident to answer enough that at some point it's okay to say, I don't know. Because none of us want to have to say, I don't know to everything. That's just embarrassing, right? But whose fault is it, if we're going to boil right down to it, whose fault is it that we don't know? It's ours. You can't blame it on the preacher. You can't blame it on your life group leader. You can't blame it on your parents who didn't teach you as you grew up. The problem is you yourself, we ourselves, let me throw myself in there. We ourselves have not studied enough. We have not read enough. We have not prayed enough. We have not shared our faith enough to be comfortable with it. And I want you to make sure you understand, I'm not talking about sharing the Roman road or the evangelism explosion plan or share Jesus without fear. I'm not talking about some plan. I'm talking about just speaking a word with Jesus' name. Telling him what he's done for you. Telling people the way he has provided for you. And not just saying things like, well, I made it through. But you actually use the name of Jesus. Jesus helped me through. God helped me through. God provided for me. I didn't just happen to get work. God provided that work. I didn't just happen to get healthy at the right time. God got me healthy at the right time. So it's taking these things that we're going to talk about anyway, and we give the glory to God where he deserves it, so that we're speaking the name for him. We're going to talk about that more in just a little bit, but we have to stop letting insignificant things, and we have to have the right perspective, y'all. We have to understand that the things that we consider to be significant are probably insignificant in the grand scheme of things. How about verse 35? He says, do you not say there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. So he says, Do you not say that there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? What's he saying here? What does the word yet mean? Do you not say that there are yet 4 months before the harvest? What's that inferring?
You still have.
There's time. There's still time. That's right. In fact, this excuse is, I'll do it later. Think about the farmers. They prepare the ground, they plant the seed, and then they pretty much let it go. If we go nowadays, modern farmers will have irrigation systems and those sort of things all in place, and there's things they'll do every day to try to help the stuff grow. But in the time of Jesus' life, though they did have irrigation possibilities and so forth, it was pretty much let nature take its course. You prepared it, you planted it. For the next 4 months, you're just chilling. You're just waiting. Now, I will be the first to admit, I am the king of procrastination. Yet I don't miss deadlines. That's important for this story. Okay? Because I'm too much type A in other ways that I'm not going to miss a deadline. I remember my brother asked me when I was in high school, has there ever been a time you didn't turn in your homework? And I just looked at him and said, why would I not turn in my homework?
Because you didn't do it?
Why would I not do it? That's the rest of that question there, Maureen. I don't know if you ever watched the episode or ever watched the TV show Friends, but there was an episode where Monica, who's very type A plus, is trying to be more laid back. And they said, has there ever been what do you do? Would you let a bill come in and let it sit on the table till it's past due? And she's like, why would I do that? I don't know if any of y'all can relate to that. Okay, some of you are like that. If the bill comes in, you're paying it today, right? If there's a deadline you have, you get it done. Draper, and you all have heard me tell this over and over, Draper would laugh because he could pretty much tell where I was in my schoolwork as far as how close a deadline was coming, because I didn't really buckle down until it got close to a deadline, because I wasn't going to miss the deadline, but so I got work to get done. That's me. I'm going to get it done. Jesus is saying, do you not say that there's 4 months? Are you not saying that you've got time, that you'll do it later, that there's no rush, there's no urgency? He says, get the work done. I get the work done because I know the time is tight and I got to buckle down. But my question is, when is Jesus returning? We don't know the deadline. We don't have a syllabus with a due date. But I can assure you, time is tight. Just look around you. Time is tight, and we need to be buckling down. He uses that farming analogy with his disciples to get their attention. He says, you think you got time, but let me show you. And he says, remember, did you catch that word he said? He said, look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the fields are white for harvest. That, remember at the end of verse 30, the woman has gone into the town. She's told them, come see this man who's told me everything I've ever done. And it says they went out of the town and were coming to him. The next verse says, meanwhile. So while they're walking out, Jesus begins this discussion with them. And he's telling them that you think you've got time, that you think that there's 4 months between sowing and reaping. But I tell you, look, and here they came. Here come the people. Jesus encourages them. He gives an encouragement to evangelize, to share their faith. If you start in verse 36, he says, already the one who reaps is receiving wages and gathering fruit for eternal life. So we're far enough into the time that the one who does the harvesting is already receiving his pay for that. Okay? So we're beyond the time of harvest. It is into it. You got it. It's not just the beginning, it's moving into it. Already the one who reaps is receiving wages and gathering fruit for eternal life, so that sower and reaper may rejoice together. For here the saying holds true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you did not labor. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labor. Verse 39, many Samaritans from the town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me all that I ever did. That's what she said. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. They said to the woman, it is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world. Let me ask you a question. Where had the disciples been?
In the town.
They had been in the town. Jesus finds an opportunity to share the gospel, to share the truth with this woman at the well. She leaves her bucket, she leaves her pitcher, whatever she was drawing with, and she goes into the town. And does she give them a theological dissertation on who this guy was sitting out there at the well?
She gave a personal experience.
She gave her personal experience. Come see the man who told me everything I've ever done. We're not asking people of faith to know theology so well that you can answer every question. In fact, she didn't have all the answers. She couldn't answer the questions that they had. All she could say is, I'm telling you, this guy told me everything I've ever done. So she goes back into the town, the same place where the disciples, you're catching that, right?
Yeah. They weren't discipling, they were getting food.
They were too busy. They were distracted. They were task-oriented.
You know, in the context of this, they did not think salvation was for the Samaritans. They thought salvation was just for the Jews. So they never even considered sharing because they didn't think the Samaritans were worthy. They didn't
That's
think
right.
Jesus had actually come for the Samaritans. And I know I'm feeling kind of convicted right now because I think a lot of times I'm willing to share salvation with people who are like me.
Yeah.
Whether it's socioeconomic or, you know, similar to me. But yet if you put me with people perhaps that I might look down upon or that I think I have absolutely nothing in common with, I might not be as ready to share.
That's right.
But salvation is for everybody. He came for everyone. And it's not up to me to determine if they're worthy.
This woman, that's absolutely right. She had a moment encounter with Jesus. She could only go back to her town and tell them about that moment of encounter. The disciples had been walking with him. They'd seen miracles. They'd seen and heard him teach. They knew they had more experiences to share. Yet, while they were in the town, Jesus basically is showing them, y'all missed it. I sent you in there, into the same place that this woman went back home to. She went back home and wasn't there long. Okay, keep in mind, okay, she is still talking to Jesus when they come back. She hasn't been in town for an instant before the people are coming out to see it. They were ripe and ready, but the disciples missed it. They missed what she had to say. Now, also get this: she piqued their interest, the townspeople. It wasn't her job to close the deal. She piqued their interest in who Jesus was by just saying, "Come meet this man that tells me everything I've ever done." Yet then they come to have their own encounter with Jesus. And what did they say? They said, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world." Jesus has called us all to go and tell. He's not asking you to have some theological discourse with people. Your testimony is your experience. What has he done for you? What has God shown you? But the problem is, we often have to look back to, well, I don't have spiritual eyes enough to see what God has done for me daily. I'm not reading his word daily to see the way that he can speak to me through his word. So I don't have anything to share with people about what God is doing because, again, it comes back to me. I haven't been indulging and engaging in the spiritual disciplines enough of reading my Bible, praying, spending time with him. isolating myself with him so that I can hear from him and then be able to share these experiences. If your testimony points all the way back to I was saved at the age of 8, are you saying God hasn't done anything for you since then? That's what we're saying. Or we haven't been spiritually in tuned enough to hear what he has done for us. It's okay to use hindsight. You don't have to recognize it when it happens. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's after the fact that we can look back and say, look what God set up for me. Look how he ordered the steps. Look how he made the plans come in just right for these things to happen for me. Stop talking about coincidence. Stop talking about happenstance. Stop talking about it just so happened that. It didn't just so happen. God orchestrated it for you. And we have to see it through his vision, through his perspective, so that we can share it with others, so that we can then be the one who goes in. So my question is, which of the three different kinds of people in this story are we? Where do you find yourself today? Are you Jesus? Are you the woman? Or are you the disciples? Let me help you. You're not Jesus. Let's just take that one off the table. Okay? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure. I know him pretty well, and you're not him. Okay. So you're not Jesus. However, you may be one who's willing to share as he was. Okay. But that would, if you're willing to share, you're more of the Samaritan woman. You're ready to go in and tell the town. You're telling whoever you come in contact with, look at what Jesus has done for me today. Let me tell you about this guy and the experiences I've had with him. Let me tell you about this God who has blessed me. Let me tell you about what happens in my life when I start following and doing things his way and the way he's turned my life around because of it. Or maybe you're the disciples. Maybe you're so busy doing good things that you miss opportunities to do the best thing. Maybe we need to take an inventory of our life. You know, it's hard. We live in a society and a culture where we have to have money to live, and to have money to live, we have to work. So we spend the greatest portion of our days at work, right? And unless we work at the very top of one of those cranes that you see in downtown Birmingham, that the guys climb up early in the morning and they don't come back down till the end of the day, and they even use buckets up there to use the restroom, and they take their lunch up there, and they do it all up there, and they're totally, completely, 100% isolated from people. Unless that's you, you have people around you that you can share your faith with. You have people around you that can hear good words about what God has done in your life. It's all about how we package it. How are you talking about the life you're living? Are you using his name? Are you giving him the glory he deserves? Are you recognizing that he's alive and active and moving in your life? Or are you afraid these people wouldn't be interested? Are you too busy to see past the task to the people?
I find myself being guilty of that because I work in a small office. There's 21 of us, and I know everybody goes to church.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody I know goes to church.
Yeah.
I mean, but just because you go to church doesn't mean you're saved.
That's right.
And just because you go to church doesn't mean that you're passionate about it, and that they still don't know what's going on in your life if you don't tell it.
That's right.
But I guess I just assume everybody goes to church and.
Well, even Kelly, and it should be, you would think, much more natural and easy to speak a word for Jesus in that setting or in this setting where here in particular, we use this room. I mean, we're all followers of Jesus. We should be able to speak a word for him to one another. What does that do, though? When you hear someone tell you the way God has worked in your life, does it encourage you?
Usually should.
Usually it should, right? I mean, that's the importance of community. You know, we talk about that. You've heard that word a lot. That's the importance of us being together in community and sharing with one another. Hebrews tells us, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together, because it's an encouragement to one another. That's the way we're supposed to do that together. So why don't we? And I'm not saying why don't you, and leaving myself out of it. Why don't we? I struggle with this. Why is it so difficult for us to give a word to Jesus? What is the hesitation? What is the fear? What is the limitations that we think we have, that we are unwilling to say, God has blessed me today? Jesus, look what Jesus did in my life.
Too busy sharing other things.
Too busy sharing other things. We don't have it as a priority. Okay?
I think that's the biggest thing, is that's not our priority.
We don't even, I don't even think about it. I
Okay.
mean, I just,
Okay?
I assume that people know that, you know, I'm blessed because of this or whatever, or.
So it really comes down to, we need to change our viewpoint. We need to see God's blessings and see His work in our life for the purpose of being able to share that with other people for the sake of sharing the gospel. When we did the gospel threads, our whole idea was, I didn't want to give you a plan of sharing the gospel with others. I wanted to give you the gospel, the whole thing, the big picture, so that you didn't need to have somebody say a particular phrase for you to be able to jump in and share a word. That you have such an understanding of who God is, who man is, and how we are separated from Him, and why Jesus had to come, and why He had to die, and how His redemption works for us, so that we can then share that with people from wherever we find ourselves talking to them. You find yourself in situations where people talk about they've had a death in their family. Well, now they're very much aware of their own mortality. They're very much aware of that life is brief, and that there is no guarantee of tomorrow. And what a great opportunity then to talk about how you deal with that through your belief in Jesus Christ and through your faith in Him. And see how natural you can walk into that without feeling like you have to walk through the entire plan of salvation or Roman road with them. You sow. Remember, some sow. Maybe you will help one day. You'll have the opportunity to reap part of the harvest because other people had labored and sowed in that person's life.
And sometimes I think that we don't stay in His presence enough to recognize the opportunities He presented to us.
A lot of times as believers, Pat, our relationship with God is on the back burner. We have other priorities going on in our life. If given a multiple choice question, and we ask what should be top priority in your life, we would quickly mark my relationship with God. But if we took inventory of our life, we'll find that it's really not like that. We'll use whatever excuse, as we were talking about earlier. I don't know why I pointed at the board. It's not up there. But we'll use whatever excuses we come up with to not gather with God's people. We'll use whatever excuses that we can come up with for not taking every opportunity we have to grow in Him through relationship with others. And then we also don't do what we should be doing on our own, so that the next time an opportunity arises, we're still scared because we're afraid we don't know enough and we haven't done what it takes. Walking with Jesus is not for the weak and lazy.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
A lot of times we're very passionate too when we need God's help, or when things are bad, or when we're down and out. And we forget that He deserves praise too.
That's right. A lot of times the only time we even consider God is when things are going wrong. Well, let's look at the actual flow of things. Sometimes life just is hard. All right. Sometimes life just stinks. We live in a fallen world that has been contaminated by sin, and things just happen and are bad. But a lot of the times, the reason life is hard is because of the choices we've made. And the choices we've made, we made them because we were leaning on our own understanding rather than being in tune and close in our relationship with God. The closer we get with Him, the more knowledge we gain of Him, which helps us then to apply that knowledge of His will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding into our life. And Paul goes on in Colossians 1:10 to say, so that we can then walk in a manner that is worthy of the calling in our life. That's how it's all knit together. We find ourselves living life on our own, making our own choices instead of letting God help us determine what we ought to do. And then through that, because we're living our life for ourselves, we make the decisions that we think is going to make us feel good. It's going to make the decisions that are, because, God wants us to be happy. And it backfires. And the next thing you know, you're coming to understand God doesn't want you to be happy as much as He desires for you to be holy, like Him. And you make bad decisions, and now you're in a bad place in your life, and now God's getting your attention. Just go read the book of Judges. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes, and the cycle begins of they served God, then they moved away from God, and they got away from God, and God sends something to get their attention, and they cry out to God, and God sends deliverance, and now they're back to serving God, and the next thing you know, they're going to do what they're moving away from God, because it's for some reason when things are going well in our life, we think we don't need Him. Well, why are the things going well in your life? Because of God. So you move away from the one who is giving you the blessing because you think you can do it better, right? So that's the encouragement, is to stay in tune and tied to Him, so that you would then be seeing your blessings in your life. You are now more aware of them, and you have spiritual eyes to see opportunities and spiritual ears and hearts to see the opportunities and hear and feel them, so that you can share a word with others about why you're being blessed in your life. I don't want to end this on the idea of a prosperity gospel. Don't serve Him for blessings. That's not what we're called to do. Blessings are a byproduct of our service to Him. Because if you're serving Him for the purpose of blessings, your heart motives are wrong, and you're not going to receive them anyway. You serve Him because of who He is and what He has done for you. And through that, you end up receiving blessings from Him.
Didn't we read that in James this week?
Sure. It's all over the place, actually, but yeah. Any questions, comments?
At my last church, we had a discipleship program that we started called REAP, but it was all about having gospel conversations with people. And in our disciple groups, one of the things that we would do, just to have, we would talk about what opportunities did you have this week to have a gospel conversation, and we'd also pick a headline. So pick a headline that happened this past week, or how could you have turned that into a gospel conversation? I mean, there's stuff that happens all the time, that if we take the opportunity and take the time to think about it, we can think of a way to bring God into it, or see how He worked in the situation, or how He could work in the situation, or how things could have been different. And I mean, I'm not great at it by any means, but it was a good practice for me, just to be intentional about looking for things. And because I mean, this stuff's going to come up at, when you're at lunch with people, or when you're, there's some stories in that lunch, and there's so many things that come up, and or the officers that just got shot, or the shooting at the naval base. I mean, but anyway, just being intentional about finding ways that you can bring God into it, because it's amazing how other people will respond. Just kind of.
You know what else helps you share more naturally with an unbeliever? Any guesses on where I might be going with this? Any ideas what is one of the best ways to be able to share your faith with an unbeliever? Be their friend. For it to be more natural. Okay, it's who you are. Good. I'm asking this question. There's no way you're going to get to where I'm trying to get. So let me just tell you. By sharing with one another. You share with one another your Christian brothers and sisters so often that it becomes natural speak. So then the next thing you know, you're not having to figure it out as you go. You are just naturally being who you are because that's the way you are anyway. So we are supposed to be a safe place. Over and over, I have asked you, as we've done our daily Bible readings, for you to have someone in your life, probably in this classroom, that you're willing to share what you're getting out of your reading. Okay? It's number one, an accountability thing so that you're more likely to read it, but it also naturally gives you the opportunity to just share with a safe place, in a safe place, to eventually be in a point where you are now just going to do that, what's that word I was using? Naturally. So I still encourage you to do that. If you haven't found a partner or 2 or 3 partners that you can meet with regularly and talk about the daily Bible reading, then I encourage you to do that. Okay? Because it's important. Those of you on Facebook, it's good to have you with us. We're finishing just a little bit early today, so y'all are welcome. And we will see you all. Actually, let me throw this out there, I guess. This will be the last one for the year on Facebook Live because of the schedule we have coming up. So we will see you in the new decade. All right? Y'all have a great afternoon. Wow. It's the last one for the